The granary door has not opened in 3 days, and the men outside have started counting the hours out loud. You can hear them through the mud brick. A voice, then several voices, then just one word, over and over. Hungry, hungry, hungry. Someone above you was supposed to answer for this. Today, that someone is you. But that door is 30 years away. Right now, the only line you have ever had to guard is the edge of a wooden writing board, and you are 6 years old. The sand outside the Scribe school is already hot enough to sting through the soles of your feet, though the sun has barely cleared the palms. Your father's hand is tight around yours, tighter than it needs to be for the last few steps. From inside the mud brick doorway, you can hear older boys reciting in unison, the cadence worn flat by repetition. I have seen violent beatings. Direct your heart to writing. Your father stops just short of the door. He crouches down to your height, which he almost never does, and gives you the only lesson he thinks you need before you disappear into that room for the next 10 years. Every other boy in this town will spend his whole life with a master standing over him, he says. In there, they teach you to become the master. He does not tell you what a master's hand looks like when it is angry. You will learn that within the hour. Inside, the air already smells of wet clay and crushed soot. The smell you will spend the rest of your life calling ink, cooling in its cakes before the first lesson even begins. You don't know it yet, but the same reed that spares you from most of the beatings the other boys receive will, one day, 30 years from now, be the only thing standing between a locked granary door and several hundred hungry men. The floor of the schoolroom is packed earth, cold under your knees even after the walk through the heat. And this is the first thing that surprises you, that a room can hold two temperatures at once, the way you are about to learn a life can hold two truths at once. You are sat cross-legged among boys you have never met. Some of them, you will learn by afternoon, sons of officials, boys who have never once gone hungry. Nobody separates you from them by rank. The scribe who runs the room, a heavy-set man named Senmut who speaks rarely and hits without warning, tells you all the same thing on the first morning. You are being brought up with the children of princes now, whatever you were before. You do not yet understand what has been taken from you to make that true, or what it will cost to keep it. The lesson before any letter is a lesson in listening. Senmut recites the words your father heard through the doorway, and now you must copy them, over and over, onto a shard of broken pottery. Because papyrus costs more than your father earns in a season, and no one wastes it on a child's first clumsy strokes. A boy's ear is on his back. He listens when he is beaten. You copy it 41 times before your hand stops shaking enough to make the reed do what you want. No one explains that this is meant as encouragement. You find that out only when you watch a boy 2 years older than you fail to recite the third stanza of the satire, and Senmut's cane finds his shoulders before he has finished stumbling through the second line. That night you dream of your father's hands, tight around yours, and you understand for the first time that he did not bring you here because he loved you less than the other fathers loved their sons. He brought you here because it was the only door in the whole of Egypt he was strong enough to push open for you. By the 4th month, you have stopped flinching every time Senmut walks behind your row. This, you will learn, is called progress. Half the boys who started beside you are already gone, sent home, or simply absent one morning, with no explanation offered to the ones who remain. Senmut tells the room, without looking up from his own tablet, that 9 boys out of 10 who begin this training never finish it. He says it the way a man states the weather. You do not know yet which 9, or whether you are already one of them. Broken pottery piles up around your feet before you notice the years passing, shard after shard of ostraca, filled edge to edge in your own cramped hand, more of them by your 10th year than most houses in your village would throw away in a lifetime. You have learned to hold the reed the way Senmut taught you, chewed soft at the tip, dipped, tapped once against the rim of the water pot so the ink doesn't run. Papyrus is still a stranger to your hand. You are shown a sheet of it exactly twice a year, held up at a distance like a relic, so that you understand what all this practice is finally for. The palette becomes an extension of your arm before it becomes anything you think about. Two wells, black on the left, red on the right. Soot and gum for the body of a text. Ochre for the parts that matter enough to be seen first. You learn that the men who correct your work always reach for the red. You learn to dread the color the way you once dreaded the cane, and then, slowly, to welcome it. Because a page marked in red is a page someone thought worth correcting, rather than discarding. The satire follows you everywhere. By now you have copied it so many times you could recite it in your sleep. And some nights you do. Your mother tells you this, half amused, half unsettled, the year you turn 11. No profession is free of a master, except the scribe. He is the master. It saves you from labor. It protects you from all work. You believe it the way you believe the sun will rise, which is to say you have stopped questioning it entirely. Not every boy makes it this far. K.A., who sat beside you the first week and shared his bread when yours ran out, is gone by the second year, pulled home to work his family's plot after his father's harvest failed twice running. You think about him sometimes, chewing the end of your reed, wondering whether the calluses on his hands look anything like the ones forming on yours, in such a different place. The morning of your final examination, Senmut hands you a fresh sheet of real papyrus, the first one that will ever be entirely yours to ruin, and says only one sentence before he walks away to watch you work. Now we find out what 10 years bought. The measuring rod is heavier than you expect the first time it's placed in your hands, and colder than the grain it's about to be driven into. You are 17, newly assigned, standing at the edge of a threshing floor outside a village whose name you will forget within the month, because there will be another village next month, and another after that. Your master scribe walks the boundary lines, calling out cubits, while you write the figures down in a hand that is finally, after 11 years, fast enough to keep pace with a man talking. This is the work the whole of your training was quietly aimed at, though nobody told you so directly. Converting a farmer's whole year, the flood, the planting, the fear of locusts, the fear of drought, into a column of numbers that either satisfies the state or doesn't. The nilometer readings arrive from upriver before you do, so by the time you reach a village, the tax is already decided in principle. Your visit is only the arithmetic that makes it official. You watch the rod go into the grain pile before your own hand does. You have learned to read the numbers before you learn to look away from what happens when they come up short. A farmer 3 fields over is short this season, and short seasons have a shape you recognize now. The men your escort brought with sticks step forward, and the farmer's voice goes the way voices go when a man is bargaining for something that was never really his to keep. You write down the final tally anyway. Your reed does not stop moving. You have been trained not to let it. That night, back at the rest house, you hear 2 other scribes trading a story you've now heard twice. A farmer somewhere upriver who packed stones into the base of his grain sacks to cheat the scale, caught only because a junior scribe insisted on emptying every 3rd sack by hand. They laugh about it. You don't, quite. You are still turning over the sound the rod made going into the pile, and the sound underneath it, the one that wasn't grain. A message reaches your master scribe before the season is out. You are being reassigned, north, to the recruiting stations along the river. He tells you this the way Senmut once told a room full of boys that 9 out of 10 fail, flatly, as if reading a tally rather than delivering news. You do not yet know that the numbers you are about to write will not measure grain at all. They will measure men. The checkpoint sits where the river forks, a low mud brick post with a view of every boat and every dusty track worth watching. And this is where you spend the better part of 2 years, noting who crosses, who carries what, who matches which name on which list. Bedouin traders come through with goods to declare. Farmers' sons come through because their names have appeared on a roster somewhere upriver, in a hand not unlike your own, and today is the day that roster becomes their life. You hold the list. You hold the reed. Between the two of them, you hold more of another man's future than any blade in your training ever taught you to carry. The work is almost peaceful in its rhythm. Call a name, confirm a face, mark the tally, wave the next one forward. Until the morning a man presses something small and heavy into your palm, along with his papers, not looking at you while he does it, and asks, in a voice pitched just under the sound of the river, whether his son's name might have been recorded in error. You have seen this coin before, in other hands, offered for other reasons. You know exactly what it buys and exactly what it costs the next name on the list if you take it. Your reed decides who marches and who stays, no blade in your hand, and yet you have never held more power to end a man's peace, or save it, with a single stroke of red ink through a name. You give the coin back. The boy's name stays where it was written. You tell yourself this is what makes you different from the scribes who don't give the coin back. And some nights, lying awake in the checkpoint's back room listening to the river, you almost believe it. Other nights, you remember that the boy still marches either way. All you decided was whether you'd be paid for it. The order that reaches you at the end of the second year is not a request. The names you have spent 2 seasons collecting are forming into a column, and that column is heading toward a border that has not stayed quiet in longer than you've been alive. You are told to go with them, not to carry a weapon, but to carry the tally board, because someone will need to count what the column becomes on the other side of that border. The column marches for 11 days before you see anything you'd call a battle, and by then your feet have blistered through twice, and your writing hand has cramped so often you've started massaging it at every rest stop, the way you were taught, without quite remembering when you were taught it. The border does not stay quiet. On the 12th day, it breaks entirely, and you spend the fighting itself doing the only thing you were ever trained to do in a crisis. You find shelter, you find your writing board, and you wait to be needed. You are needed by evening. They bring the count to you in the open ground behind the standard bearers, the way the army has always done it, the way it was done before your grandfather was born. You do not describe, in your own mind, more than you have to. There is a pile, there is a smell that the desert wind does not carry away fast enough. There are men waiting for you to do arithmetic, because arithmetic is the only part of this that anyone above you has decided is your job. You count in tens. It's the same shape you were taught to write at 6 years old, chalk on a shard of pottery, your father's hand tight around yours at the door. No one warned you back then that the symbol for 10 would ever mean this. A soldier beside you jokes, low and tired, that you're the only man on this field who's had a good day. More hands counted, more gold owed to more men who fought for it. You don't answer him. You keep your eyes on the tally board, because the tally board is the only thing in front of you that still makes sense. That night you don't sleep, not from fear exactly, but from the particular blankness that comes after a day spent turning what should not be numbers into numbers anyway. You think of the boy at the checkpoint, the one whose name you saved. You wonder, and don't let yourself finish the thought, whether he is somewhere on this field, or somewhere in that pile, or somewhere still marching, still counted, still yours to account for. If you've ever had to turn someone else's worst day into a number for somebody above you, say so in the comments. You won't be the only one here who has. You return from the campaign 3 months later with a new title stitched into how people address you, a heavier purse, and something folded into you now that has no line in any ledger. Word reaches you before you've even unpacked. The Treasury Office wants you. A discrepancy has been found in the accounts, and someone above you has already decided, before you walk through the door, that the discrepancy has your name on it. The vizier's antechamber is cooler than anywhere else you've stood in months, and colder in a way that has nothing to do with the stone. You wait there for the better part of a morning before anyone speaks to you, which you will later understand is itself a kind of instruction. The installation that trains every man who serves this office teaches that silence is a tool a vizier is meant to use as deliberately as any scale or seal. The discrepancy is small, on paper, A quantity of temple linen, recorded twice in two different hands, once by you and once by a clerk you've never met. Small enough that, on any other week, it might have been quietly corrected and forgotten. This is not any other week. Grain reserves are thin across 3 provinces. Tempers are thin along with them, and someone above the vizier has decided that a scribe's carelessness makes a convenient shape for a larger anger to take. You think, more than once during those 11 days of waiting, of the edict a king issued a generation before you were born, that a man who cheats the treasury or evades what he owes it loses his nose and his home in the same judgment. You did not cheat anyone. You are almost certain of this. Almost is not a word that has ever felt smaller. The vizier's silence lasts longer than any accusation. When he finally speaks, it is only to say that the second entry was made after yours, by a hand imitating your strokes badly enough that any scribe who'd trained past his 5th year should have caught it at a glance. He does not apologize for the 11 days you spent not sleeping. He simply asks whether you are ready to take on more. The clerk whose hand made that second entry is never mentioned again by name. You understand, without being told directly, that someone had to be blamed for what was ultimately a shortage no single scribe caused, and that this time it was not going to be you. You do not know what happened to him. You find that you do not entirely want to. Your reward for surviving arrives within the month. Oversight of an entire settlement of craftsmen, out past the western cliffs. The kind of posting a scribe waits a whole career to be offered. You take it with both hands, the way you were taught to take anything the state offers you. It does not occur to you yet to ask what a settlement that skilled, that isolated, might need from the man responsible for keeping it fed. The house they give you at the edge of the settlement still smells of wet mud plaster the day you move in, and it is larger than any house your family ever lived in. For the first year, you catch yourself walking its rooms at night, just to feel the size of what you've become. You oversee rations now, not grain in the field, but grain already promised. Bread, beer, fish, the steady rhythm that lets the finest craftsmen in the kingdom spend their days carving eternity into royal tombs, instead of worrying whether their children will eat. You are, by any measure your 11-year-old self could have imagined, the man the satire promised you'd become. You do not lift anything heavier than a reed. You have not been struck by another person's hand in over 20 years. There's a particular kind of relief in that sentence. Hit like if you've ever felt it. The relief of finally being safe from something that used to threaten you every single day. There are days, walking the settlement's narrow lanes past men whose skill will outlive every king they serve, when you let yourself imagine what a life like this becomes after it ends. Whether a name recorded carefully enough, honored highly enough, might be remembered the way certain scribes before you have been remembered, not just buried, but kept. Turned, somehow, into something closer to a god than a man. You do not say this thought aloud. You are old enough now to know that saying it aloud is how a man invites the gods to correct him. For the first time in your life, a delivery is late, and no one above you seems troubled by it. You send the usual message north. The usual message comes back. Soon, soon. The treasury is settling accounts. Be patient. You are patient. Because patience has served you at every level you've climbed. The second delay arrives 2 weeks after the first apology. The third arrives before you finish drafting your complaint about the second. You begin, quietly, to count the days the way you once counted grain against a tax quota, the way you once counted hands against a battlefield tally. Except this time, you are counting against your own settlement, your own men, and the number keeps climbing in a direction you have never once seen it climb before. The granary's mud brick is still warm under your palm when you press it flat against the locked door on the 18th day, as if the heat alone might tell you something the silence inside won't. The men have stopped waiting quietly. You watch them from the doorway of your own house as they form into a column. Not a mob, not yet. Just men who have decided that standing still has stopped working. They pass the first guard post. They pass the second. By the time they reach the fifth, Word has already run ahead of them to your door, and you are the man everyone in the settlement now expects to have an answer. You do not have one. You have 30 years of training that taught you how to make numbers balance, and nothing in any of it tells you what a man is supposed to do when the numbers are the reason people are dying. This is not a story about a locked door. This is not a story about 18 days. This is the moment 30 years of counting other people's numbers finally comes due against your own. So you do the only thing your training has actually prepared you for. You go and get grain. Not through the channels that have failed for 18 days, but around them, to the storehouse of a temple 2 hours south, where an old debt owed to your office might, if you're patient and precise in exactly the way you were trained to be, still be collected. You come back with 46 sacks slung across borrowed donkeys, less than half of what's owed, and you stand before the column of men at the mortuary temple where they've gathered to make your offer. It is not enough. You know it is not enough even as you're counting it out. But it is something, and something, delivered by a man willing to stand in front of them and be counted himself, buys you the only currency that matters that afternoon. A little more time. That night, a letter arrives from another scribe in another part of the settlement, describing what the men said while they waited, that a portion of their grain had gone missing from the ledgers, somewhere between promise and delivery, that they were dying, that they did not live at all. You read it twice. You have written 1,000 reports in your life measuring exactly this kind of shortfall in exactly this kind of language, always from the safe distance of the scribe, recording someone else's crisis. This is the first one where the crisis has your own name inside it. You are old now, old enough that the men who once frightened you as a boy have been dead for decades, old enough that your own hand has begun to shake in exactly the way you used to watch the hands of accused clerks shake in front of viziers. The settlement survives that year, and the year after, on patched grain and delayed promises, and men like you standing in front of columns with less than what was owed. You have spent your whole life making sure other people's numbers came out even. You begin, in the quiet hours, to wonder who will make sure yours do. The papyrus in front of you now is the finest you have ever been given, finer even than the sheet Senmut once handed you the morning of your final examination, a lifetime and a whole river's worth of harvests ago. You have commissioned scribes to prepare thousands of documents across your years of service. This is the first one prepared entirely for you. Your own hand is not steady enough anymore to write it yourself, so a younger scribe sits across from you, reed poised, waiting for the words that will travel with you into the Hall of Two Truths. You have watched this ritual performed for other men your whole career, and never once let yourself imagine standing at the center of it. Osiris will be there, 42 other judges beside him, each demanding a single denial. Anubis will set your heart on one side of the scale, and the feather of Ma'at on the other, and Thoth, the same god whose name you invoked as a frightened boy copying his first line of the satire, will record whatever the balance decides. You dictate the denials slowly, choosing each one the way you once chose each stroke of red ink through a name at the checkpoint, knowing exactly what weight it carries. I have not caused hunger. I have not made anyone weep. I have not been unjust in measuring grain. The younger scribe writes them down without looking up, the way you once wrote down a farmer's shortfall without looking up, the way you once counted hands in tens without looking up. You wonder, for the length of one long breath, whether the feather will know the difference between a man who tried and a man who simply survived long enough to be asked. The reed that decided which boy marched to a border 30 years ago is the same reed, in shape, if not in body, now writing the only document in your long career that will decide something about you. Somewhere behind you, through the window, a boy is being led by his father's hand toward the house of life, sand hot enough to sting through his sandals, a lesson in listening waiting for him just past the door. He does not know yet what that door will ask of him. Neither, once, did you. The scale will hold what it holds, You have made your accounting the only way you were ever taught to, in full, in order, and, at the very end, in your own hand.